What type of person are you? Are you typically shy when it comes to communication with other people? Or do you find it easy to talk with anyone? Does it matter who the person is that you're talking to? Whether it's an adult, a child, a person that has more power than you, and maybe there's a power dynamic, perhaps in the workplace. Does it matter if it's another type of authority figure, for example, a police person or some type of law enforcement person? Does it make a difference what type of conversation you're having as well? In your experience, have you found that different types of conversations elicit different emotions in you? And to what degree? Okay? So when it comes to communicating with other human beings, what's your style? What's your experience like? I know that some people grow up with family members, generally speaking, or let's say usually, in the traditional sense. They grew up with parents, and the relationships at home between parent and child can be different depending on where you're from and what your background is. For example, in some families, I would say in some cultures, because culture is not just a difference between a country, from country to country. Culture can also exist within different family units, right? So in certain families, the culture is that the parents or the adults and the child must submit, and there's no questions asked. There's not a negotiation in the family. So whatever the parents say, that's what it is. The parent is the law. Okay, so kids that grow up in this type of family dynamic have an understanding of authority. They have an understanding of relationships and how they establish themselves, what they establish themselves around, some of the values and beliefs around relationships are a certain way when you come from a culture where the parent has the final word and the parent is law. These types of kids also have an understanding about self just from coming from that environment. So they have an understanding about self. Now, how is that different, if at all, from somebody who grows up where, or let's say children who grow up in a family culture where maybe people talk things out, okay, even though the parent ultimately makes the decisions and tells what to do and gives direction and whatnot, the kids are still heard and they have a voice, and they can say yay or nay on an issue and feel heard and feel valued, regardless of what the ultimate decision is from the parent's perspective. So then there's a third group. I mean, I'm sure that we can really break down these dynamics on so many levels, but let's look at another group where the children run the show. Okay, the parent is pretty much non-existent. There's no sense of authority in the house. The child is the one that says what we do and when we do it. Okay? So there's that aspect as well. And in this case, what is that child's understanding of communication? What is that child's understanding of relationships and dynamics within family units and just between individuals? So, depending on where you're from, and we could go on about this, of course, but depending on where you're from, and I take the example of family because most of the time everything starts with the family. A family is where you learn basic values, develop your belief systems. Okay, those are the first people that you meet. Okay, it could be a biological family or it could be a non-traditional family, but regardless, as a person coming into the world, that's where you start. So that's why we start with with talking about the family when it comes to this topic. But depending on where you're from, you can have a different understanding. You can carry, let's say, you can carry a different vibe, have a different approach to communication depending on where you're from. And your communication style is also influenced by your understanding of self, yeah? So, for example, let's take the negotiation family, right? Or let's say democratic family, if for lack of a better term. Okay, not to get political or anything, but let's say the democratic family where, yes, there are rules and regulations and expectations and such, but the child does have a say-so and can give their 2 cents on any type of topic or issue or any dealings that the family might have. And the caveat of that is that they are heard. They are taken into account regardless of the outcome. So this child, let's say, grows up into becoming an adult. Okay, what do you think their approach to communication will be relative to talking, let's say, when they speak with other adults at this point, right? Because the child has grown up now. When they speak with friends, again, continuing to speak with family, when they speak with family, when they speak with colleagues, when they speak with children, when they speak with pets, okay? Or when they speak with somebody of a higher authority than themselves. So whether it's a law enforcement personnel, whether it's a boss, or somebody that has a more executive power within the workplace, how do you think they handle it? What is their approach to communication? Let's take another example. You take the example where the child has no say and they grow up with yeah. Basically, you're seen but you're not heard. Okay? How do you think that child will approach communication? What are some of the experiences that they may have as a child that will influence their adult lives within the domain of communication? Do you think that they might be shy? Maybe less communicative? More easygoing? Less decisive in their internal decisions and then their actions? Less likely to speak up in an environment? Or do you think that they will come out and be more aggressive than before because of whatever rationale you want to give it. But do you think now that they have the chance to speak, now they'll take the mic and speak forever, regardless of who's listening, how it feels, how it sounds, what it sounds like, who's hurt, who's not hurt? They just need to speak and just let it come out. What are your thoughts on that? Now, communication is it's a very interesting aspect of human lives. It says a lot about you. It says a lot about your character, your personality. And it also reveals some information. Obviously, we can't go too deep unless we investigate the full picture of a person, or the full story, the full history of a person. But it does reveal some information about your background, particularly your childhood. So it's interesting to see, for example, if we were to go further, how certain adults have or exude at least confidence to speak their minds unequivocally and not worry about who thinks what, not worry about other people's feelings. Not to say that they're going to be rude or they're trying to be rude or they're trying to be offensive. Sometimes they're really not. They just want to say what they want to say. And what they're saying is not necessarily offensive. It's not rude. But it may not be pleasant to whomever is listening either. Especially if they're addressing someone very specific. So, these people, I wonder how easy or how difficult their lives are when they can just speak their minds without filter, basically, without filter. They just come out and say it, bang, look, this is the problem, this is how I feel about it, this is what I think. Okay, keep it moving. They don't really care if you're offended by it, as long as they're not saying it in a way that is offensive. Okay? There are some people, they will just run you over with their words, and that's another type. Okay? We're not really gonna dive into that, but that type does exist, and there's a category for them as well. Okay? And if that's you, hopefully you're aware of that, and hopefully you are working on it. But of course, we don't want to, offend people intentionally. Of course, we don't want to offend people intentionally. But it's just interesting to see how some people can speak their minds freely, without filter and without apologizing. And the beauty of it is they are heard, they are welcomed, because at that point, usually by the time you see them, at least they've been doing it for so long, and people recognize them as, oh, that's just Lucy, that's who she is, that's just Ben, that's who he is. They don't even think twice. People don't even think twice about them because they've established that personality from the get-go. So that's another thing, that's another aspect that we have to look at, but that's another video, of course. We can't talk about that right now. How do you establish yourself? How do you present yourself as a package where people, it's basically a take it or leave it approach, okay? You either like me or you don't, okay? Bye. Okay? Some people are like that, and they are able effectively to certain type, as a certain brand, if you will, okay, based on the way that they show up in the world. On the flip side, there are other people that, again, adults at that too. You would think that, I'm an adult, I'm established, I have my life, I live my life with everything that comes with it. And yet, you would be surprised to see how gullible they are, how easily influenced they are, okay, how submissive they are to just about anyone who has authority. Or maybe not. Maybe the person doesn't even have to have authority. They just have to exercise some type of authority over the person. Or the person just has to perceive that this other individual has something over them. It doesn't have to be authority, but has something over them that makes the other person better for one reason or another. Often it's perceived. It's not the reality. It's not necessarily authority, but it's the perception of the child, now adult, and going back to that space of, maybe they were not heard as a child, or maybe they were. We don't know. We don't know what their past is. But in present day, what we notice, what we observe, is that regardless of how they grew up, something along the way, they are not able to assert themselves in the same way as the other character that we covered earlier. Okay, they're not able to sell themselves. I don't really like the word sell, but let's say position themselves in the world in a way that, I'm gonna say what I need to say. I'm gonna speak my mind. I'm going to think on my own. Okay, I don't need another brain to think for me. I'm gonna think on my own, and I'm gonna say what I think. Yeah. If you like it, great. If you don't, that's fine. But I'm still gonna speak up. Okay, I'm not trying to necessarily offend anybody. I'm not trying to step on any toes. But this is what I think. And it's interesting to see how some people can achieve this persona of assertion, of strong positioning, without being rude or without being offensive or anything towards anyone else, but just position themselves in a way. It's kind of like a tree, right? A tree, you put a tree there, you plant a tree. Yeah, the tree could have a root or two, and it won't stand very long, right? One little breeze and then poof, you're gone. No more tree. Or you plant a tree and the roots start to grow, really grow into the ground. Not just one or two roots now. We have several roots growing. And that tree, sooner or later, will become stronger, right? At the foundation. So one little breeze will not shake them. One word from an authority figure, or one word from somebody, maybe an enemy, or somebody that may have some type of position compared to them, from a friend, colleague, from family members even. Like, that doesn't sway the tree. That's those people are considered breeze, right? Either a breeze or the wind or a storm, whatever you call them, depending on the level of that influential person. Yeah, they'll come around, but the tree is not going to shake. It's not going to lean. Okay, and if it leans, it'll get right back up. Okay, it's not gonna fall over or get completely uprooted because of that quote-unquote person of influence. fall in terms of your communication style, your communication approach, your history of communication, and after you assess that, where do you think that's from? Why are you like this? Okay? Why are you like this? Lastly, last question for you is, are you okay with it? Whatever you answered for yourself, what's your style, what's your approach, why you like this, where is it from, and lastly, are you okay with it?